What if I told you that King Charles just made a decision so final, so permanent, it cut off Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from the very legacy they once claimed as their birthright? A silence fell over the royal courtrooms. No trumpets, no formal announcement, just a quietly inked decree, signed by the sovereign himself, that would sever centuries of entitlement in one clean stroke. The monarchy had spoken. But this time, it wasn't a whisper from the Queen or a subtle distancing from the firm. This was a statement, raw and loud and blistering, and it echoed across every tabloid, headline, and breakfast table in the United Kingdom. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's inheritance, cancelled. Let that sink in for a moment. Not delayed, not reduced, not quietly redirected into a trust for their children. Cancelled. And for the first time in royal history, the weight of that decision didn't just affect the two individuals in question. It sent a chilling message to every branch of the Windsor family tree. Loyalty isn't inherited. It's earned. But how did it come to this? Was this the final act of a king pushed too far? Or was this move years in the making, built on whispers behind palace walls, hidden clauses in dusty old wills, and a vault of secrets that now threaten to destroy more than just reputations? This is not a tabloid rumor. It's not palace gossip. It's a reckoning. And it's time we unpack every shattered piece. Let's go back to the beginning. It started not with a press conference, but with an eerie calm at Buckingham Palace. On the morning of the announcement, the palace gates stood motionless. The guards, stoic as ever, held their ground. But inside, something was brewing. Something that would rupture the royal fabric from within. Phones buzzed in every wing of the palace. Not with scandalous leaks, but internal alerts. Royal staff were instructed to prepare for a significant internal reshuffling. No one had any idea what that meant. Not yet. But King Charles did. Alone in his private study, he sat at his desk with the same fountain pen Queen Elizabeth used for her coronation vows. The same desk where decades ago, Princess Diana once wrote letters to her sons. And on the top of the stack, a parchment with two names, Henry Charles Albert David and Rachel Meghan Markle. There was no ceremony, no advisors, just a father and a king. And when his signature met the paper, he ended the financial inheritance of two of the most controversial royals of the modern era. But the timing, the timing. That's what shocked everyone. Why now? Why this moment, in the midst of recovery from illness, as succession questions swirl and the British public grows louder in their scrutiny of royal spending? The answer is layered, painful, and deeply personal. Because while the world watched Netflix specials, read memoirs, and debated podcast drama, something else was happening, something far away from the public eye. Something that involved a hidden clause, an old safe locked since 1997, and a final wish that Queen Elizabeth herself may have tried to protect, but ultimately could not enforce. But before we get to that, let's ask the real question. Why would a father cut off his own son? Was it betrayal? Was it about trust? Or was it something even darker? And what role did Meghan Markle really play in this decision? Because behind the polished Instagram posts and staged appearances, there were growing suspicions. Financial discrepancies, unauthorized visits to royal financial advisors, requests that seemed innocent until they weren't. There were whispers of back-channel negotiations to reopen access to the Duchy of Cornwall funds, rumors of Meghan approaching multiple institutions under different names, and an alleged plan to secure long-term inheritance rights for Archie and Lilibet. Even if Harry and Meghan never stepped foot in the UK again. And still, King Charles said nothing. He remained calm, until something tipped him, and that something came in the form of a letter. A letter marked with the seal of Queen Elizabeth II. A letter that had remained unread by the public, locked in a private royal archive, and only recently resurfaced due to an unexpected audit of the royal trusts. The contents of that letter? We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, imagine being in the Montecito mansion that morning. Harry, pacing by the window. Meghan on her phone, refreshing news feeds. Then, the headline. King Charles strips Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of inheritance rights. No call. No warning. No palace briefing. It was a public gut punch, and Harry wasn't the first to know. The world was. Sources close to the palace say Harry attempted to call King Charles 4 times in the following hour. No response. Instead, it was William who answered, and what he said reportedly ended with Harry slamming his phone against the wall. But even William didn't know the full extent of what was coming. Because Charles hadn't just cut off the current funds. He had erased them from future royal inheritance structures altogether. Properties, estates, art, private investments tied to the crown. Gone. The trust funds that were set aside during Diana's time? Recalculated. The allowances traditionally given to non-working royals. Suspended indefinitely. Even Charles's personal estate, Highgrove, has been legally shielded to prevent inheritance claims from Harry and Meghan's family line. But this wasn't just a financial move. It was surgical, legal, irreversible. And now we return to that letter. The Queen's letter, written in the final year of her life. Stored in the red box, a secure compartment for private royal documentation and addressed to her son, Charles. The letter was short, just 2 pages, but its contents were seismic. She spoke of trust, of duty, of sacrifice, and of her fears that without clear instruction, the monarchy would be pulled apart by entitlement and division. And at the end of the letter, she made a chilling request. Protect the crown, even from blood. Those were her words. And whether or not Charles intended to honor that request in the beginning, he had now decided. The line was drawn. But here's the part that has the entire UK, and perhaps the world, buzzing. Was there a catalyst? A final betrayal? A trigger event that pushed Charles to act when he did? Yes, and we'll get to that soon. Because as we peel back the layers of this royal fallout, we'll uncover a last-minute meeting Meghan had with royal solicitors under a fake name. Secret recordings from inside the Sussex estate in California. A clause buried in a 1996 document that changed everything. And the one call King Charles received just 72 hours before signing the revocation that left him shaken and silent for nearly 10 minutes. This is not just about inheritance. It's about identity, legacy, and the deep, unhealed wounds within the most famous family on earth. And it's only the beginning. Because what comes next will leave the royal family and the public forever changed. No one in the UK expected to hear this on a Sunday morning. That was the line spoken by BBC royal correspondent Richard Palmer when he interrupted regular morning coverage with breaking news. What had started as a quiet, overcast day quickly turned into a media frenzy. Phones rang. Reporters scrambled. Twitter exploded. A crimson banner swept across every major broadcast channel in the UK. Statement from His Majesty King Charles III to the nation. Live in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's all the public had to brace themselves. 5 minutes to wonder. Was the king abdicating? Was he dead? Was William now taking over? Was the monarchy about to be dismantled? But no one, absolutely no one, expected what came next. The screen faded to black. Then, a wide shot of the familiar drawing room in Buckingham Palace. The same room where Queen Elizabeth had made announcements during the pandemic. The same room where Charles had first addressed the nation after her passing. Only this time, it wasn't grief or formality on his face. It was resolve. Eyes steady, hands clasped. A pause that lasted exactly 3 seconds, and then came the bombshell. After much thought, prayer, and reflection, both as your monarch and as a father, I have taken the extraordinary decision to remove certain individuals from all inheritance entitlements tied to the crown's private and public estates. You could feel the silence. You could hear millions of teacups being placed gently down. Hear the subtle intake of breath across every living room in Britain. Did he just say what we think he said? Then he continued, slow, deliberate. This decision is final. It reflects not just the present needs of the monarchy, but the long-standing values we must preserve. It is not out of vengeance, but necessity. That word, necessity, it cut deeper than any royal sword ever could. He never named names, but he didn't have to, because within minutes, Clarence House released the supplemental statement. The one that would ripple through royal history like a tidal wave. It listed 2 individuals, and 2 alone, whose financial ties to the royal inheritance would be legally and permanently severed. Prince Henry Charles Albert David of Sussex, Rachel Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex. And just like that, 2 people born or married. into privilege found themselves on the outside of history's most secure financial legacy. But here's where it gets interesting. Because not only was the decision shocking, it was strategic. You see, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment reaction. This was planned, deliberate, months, if not years, in the making. The broadcast was timed to coincide with a bank holiday weekend. Most government offices were closed. Parliament wasn't in session. Legal experts were caught off guard. And yet, the paperwork? Already filed. Every signature verified. Every asset mapped out. The legal execution was airtight. Which begs the question, was this Charles's plan all along? And if so, why now? Why not right after the Oprah interview? Why not when Spare hit bookshelves? Why not after the Netflix docuseries accused the royal family of racism and betrayal? Because timing is everything in the monarchy. And the timing of this announcement was no accident. Inside sources tell us that 3 days before the broadcast, King Charles received a call. A call from one of his most trusted aides, informing him of a development in California that changed everything. Allegedly, Meghan had attempted to set up a private trust fund using royal credentials. And while the legal attempt failed, the attempt alone was enough. Enough for Charles to realize that his silence was no longer protection. It was weakness. Enough to push him over the edge. But let's go back to the moment of the broadcast, because what happened after he spoke was just as jaw-dropping. Cameras cut. Royal seals faded from the screen. But behind palace walls, explosions. William reportedly stormed into the private chamber moments later. According to one insider, his first words were, "You should have told me. I would have stood with you." Charles's response, "Some things a king must do alone." Meanwhile, in California, the Sussex household was in chaos. Neighbors later claimed they heard shouting from inside the estate. A security vehicle was seen leaving at high speed just 10 minutes after the announcement. And then, the silence. For nearly 24 hours, the Sussexes said nothing. Not a tweet. Not a post. Not a publicist's whisper. Then, quietly, a statement was released through a US-based attorney, not their usual PR firm. It read, "We are reviewing this surprising and disappointing development with our legal counsel and reserve our response until further consultation." That was it. Cold, controlled, calculated. But what Meghan said in private was anything but. Leaked texts later confirmed that she allegedly messaged a close confidant. "He thinks he can erase us? We built this brand. This will backfire. Wait until I speak." There it was, the next battlefront. And Charles knew it. Which is why he didn't stop at the broadcast. Because what wasn't aired, but what was filed just hours later, was a formal royal decree sealing off access to over 14 individual inheritance sources previously linked to Harry's line. Estates, bonds, art collections, jewelry, vintage cars, historic property deeds, even income from former duchy-owned farmlands. All locked down, transferred into a safeguarded structure legally unreachable by the Sussex line. But it wasn't just about locking Harry and Meghan out. It was about protecting what's left of the monarchy's reputation. And for Charles, this wasn't vengeance. This was legacy control. Because make no mistake, he wasn't just cutting them off from cash. He was cutting them off from memory. In fact, several portraits of Harry and Meghan have reportedly been removed from Sandringham and Windsor's East Gallery. Their official bios now appear below working royals on the royal.uk website. And royal charity patronage listings no longer include the Sussex name, even in historical contexts. Erasure in plain sight. And while some call it cruel, others call it justice. Let me ask you, do you think this is punishment or preservation? Was Charles cold-hearted or finally brave? Because the public is divided. Outside the palace, small groups gathered. Some clapped, some wept. An elderly woman held up a sign that read, "Diana wouldn't have wanted this." Another man shouted back, "No. Diana wouldn't have wanted the crown exploited either." It was as if the ghosts of the past had returned. Old wounds reopened, and every royal watcher felt pulled into the storm. And yet, in the eye of that storm stood one man, King Charles. Stoic, measured, silent. But silence has its price. Because in the absence of royal response, the vacuum fills itself. And that's exactly what's about to happen. Because deep in the archives of royal legal documents, a clause was unearthed. One no one saw coming. A clause buried in a forgotten codicil of the Queen Mother's will. And it's a clause that might just mean Charles didn't have the right to cancel Harry's inheritance after all. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the late Queen saw this storm coming long before any of us did? Long before the Netflix deals, before Oprah, before the explosive memoirs and the race allegations and the countless private photographs turned into public currency. What if Queen Elizabeth, known for her stoicism, her discipline, her unrivaled sense of duty, knew this fracture within her family was inevitable? And what if she wrote it all down? Buried inside the royal archives, there exists a vault few are allowed to access. Not even senior royals have unrestricted entry. This is where the most sensitive documents reside. Confidential letters, private memoirs, military secrets, and handwritten notes from monarchs past and present.